Welcome! Today I would like to talk about a game which I played on the last weekend of the second league this year, and I played against the German international master Raoul Strohhaeker. Before we come to the game, let me mention that we managed to avoid another relegation to the third league, so very happy about that, of course. And now let me go into the game against the German international master Raoul Strohhaeker, who plays for the Cologne Chess Friends. So I played with the white pieces, and I wanted to avoid any sort of preparation because I was not really prepared myself. That's why I went with the move c4 instead of knight f3, which I usually play. But my opponent played rather quickly in the opening, so I think he was still quite confident in his own preparation. And I played this move bishop g2. Now black of course has this option of taking dc, but you can also play the more traditional lines like c5 here. And the point is now if I go castles in this position, he can go d4, and then we get a completely different type of position, which I think is a bit passive for white. Some players like to play this, but it's not really my cup of tea. So instead I went for the move c takes d, and we reach a Tarrasch, so the classical Tarrasch main line, the old line that now occurs after bishop e7, knight c3 and castles. So in this position white can go dc or can go bishop g5, which is what I did in the game, and my opponent quite quickly played the move c5 to c4. Well, to be honest, I have not analyzed this line since probably more than 25 years, I would guess, and when I was a kid, one of my first coaches told me there's this move b3 which you can play here, so that's what I now did in the game. The other move which I know exists is this move knight e5, which is the absolute main line these days, which I now looked up. But during the game I thought, okay, maybe this b3, this is something which is played very rarely, maybe he doesn't know that. But that was apparently also not the case, as he blitzed out the move c takes b. And white has two options here. One is to go for this move a takes b, and one is to go for the move queen takes b3. Queen b3, of course, has the advantage of bringing the queen into the game and giving me a bit more active piece play. The move ab has the advantage of actually taking care of this c4 square, which is quite weak if I go queen b3. In any case, I played queen b3, and he still blitzed out this move knight to a5, so I'm pretty sure he was still in his preparation here. So I had to calm down a bit and try to understand the position. So what does black want? So black wants to go fully on this c file, so he will probably play bishop e6, rook c8 and knight c4. So now I have to find a setup which is kind of flexible against that, and which is not cause too much trouble by that plan. So that's what I did. I went with a queen to c2, and now I played the move knight e5 and queen to d3. So I thought this was actually quite a clever idea to play like this, because now, even if he goes knight c4, he's not really threatening much. So that's what happened in the game, knight c4. And here I had a longer think. I have different ways of playing now. I went for the move rook ab1 because I thought it cannot be too bad to just attack this guy. And I had a plan here. So I thought after rook b1, he probably either has to play h6, which is very sharp, and I think it's objectively the best move, or something like b6. Whereas I thought what he played in the game is actually not so good, but it's very complex. So he played the move knight to d6 in the game. So knight d6 has this idea of going bishop f5, and then my move rook ab1 would of course look very stupid. So if I do something normal now, like just playing rook bc1, let's say, then it's clear that my move rook ab1 would not make that much sense. Still, in the games in the database that I found later on, the moves rook b3 and rook bc1 were featured. But instead, I went for something which is much more ambitious. So maybe you can pause the video and you can think about a very interesting option for white. Alright. I played the move bishop takes f6, and the point is, of course, if he just takes back with the bishop, then I can play knight e5 and always meet bishop f5 with e4. So yet after bishop f6, he can recapture with the g-pawn. And now if I just go away with a knight, he has bishop f5 and I'm basically lost. So for that reason, I decided not to sack a piece. Knight takes d5. So this was my idea when I played rook ab1 actually. And during the game, I thought this looks really, really good for white. But the computer kind of disagrees a bit, says it's maybe a tiny bit better for black, but it's very, very unclear. So from a practical point of view, I really like this decision to play rook ab1 and sacrifice the piece. Yeah, and now from the black side, it's also not super easy how to react. So during the game, I thought the most natural is probably to take on e5 and after de to play this move knight to c4, because this is the way in which you keep the knight active. But now I have rook b7, so threatening here, basically forcing black now to take. And after takes, queen takes. When I calculated the position, I thought this looks very bad for black. The point is, he cannot take on d5 that easily. I just play bishop d5, so let's show that. Bishop d5, and now this bishop is really awkward. He has to make a really super awkward bishop move like bishop a3. I can take here, for instance, and the position is quite good for white. That said, though, the computer says this position is around equal and gives some moves like, for instance, rook c5, forcing me to initiate this queen trade and then putting some pressure here. But to be honest, if you see this position, at least I thought white should be substantially better. And also when we analyzed on human level afterwards, I had the feeling it's much harder to play this for black. So that's why after some deliberation and dealing with the shock that I sacrificed a piece in a basically non-theoretical position, my opponent decided not to play fe, but to take on d5. But I mean, the basic structure of the position remains. White has a few pawns against the piece, and black is a bit cramped. So he took fe, de. Now, of course, knight c4 is no longer possible, but he has this move knight e8, which at least provides another defender for the king later on. And now I played queen to f3. So here the most standard move would be to go rook b7. I think it's also objectively a decent move. But somehow during the game I felt like playing more sharply and not like playing some endgame with 3 pawns for a piece, but instead trying to checkmate him. And also, to be honest, I really overestimated my position here. So after queen f3, I thought he's sort of busted, when in reality he's maybe slightly better. So, but yeah, with this king, at a human level, I have to say it's still very, very scary for black. Okay, so now he took the time to actually defend the b7 pawn by playing b6. And I could show my idea, which is just to go rook fd1, threatening bishop f7 followed by rook d8. And he ran away with his queen, queen c7. And here I had prepared this move, rook b to c1. Yeah, now it gets, again, very, very sharp. The point is, he has different moves here. So my main point is if he takes on c1, takes, king g2. Materially, it's maybe even slightly better for black, because he has 2 rooks and 1 knight for a queen and a few pawns. But on a practical level, this king is still extremely weak. So what is my plan? My plan is to just set up something like this, and then it's very hard for him to defend. Or if he tries to prevent it with a move like rook c5, I can just go, let's say, queen e4, and now either renew the same idea or go with something like f4. And his pieces are just very uncoordinated, so I would judge this position as being clearly better for white. Not sure if the machine agrees with that or not, but my feeling is that white has clearly the better, easier play at least. The move which I was worried about the most during the game here is the move queen to d7, which looks very counterintuitive, but which is also the first line of the computer. The point is, now if I take here, he takes back and I try this, then he has this intermezzo, and he can take here, and black is winning. So bishop f7 is not possible. So after this move, I would have to do something slower, like for instance playing king g2, when I think the position is dynamically balanced. I have 2 pawns for the piece, but still his king is quite weak, and I think it's just a completely unclear position ahead. Instead, after the move rook bc1, he played the move bishop to c5, and I think this was mainly due to a calculation error that he made. At least that's what he told me after the game. Bishop c5, which now allows me to play e6. And here my opponent, when he calculated bishop c5, he was relying on this move king to g7. So now maybe you can again pause the video and you can tell me why king to g7 is not such a good idea. Well, I hope you found it. The right move is the move e7, attacking the rook. And of course, if the rook moves, queen f7 is deadly, so he has to take. But now there is a double attack on c8 and g7, and black is lost. So for that reason, after e6, he decided he cannot play king to g7, but instead he had to settle for something much more passive, the move knight to g7. But now it's clear after ef, king h8, that white has the upper hand. Yeah, so in terms of material, it's still 3 pawns for this knight on g7, but it's very sad piece in a sense. And his rooks are also bound to this pawn on f7. During the game I had this very aggressive mindset, as I said. I wanted to try to checkmate him, and that's what I continued now with this move rook c4, hinting at a later rook h4. And yeah, he answered with rook cd8, rook d3, stabilizing the position a bit. And yeah, here he played actually quite well. So he's tied down. So the only piece which can make a useful move here is the queen. The queen goes to e5. And now I just attacked it again. Rook e4. So the point is, if he gives a check, I can always just run to g2, and there's not really so much happening. He went queen h5. But here now I have a clever move, namely the move rook to g4. And it's clear that black is suffering. So what is the idea? If he makes... this move is especially bad, but in principle the idea is always that I take on g7 and then I have this rook g8 intermezzo. In this case it's even a checkmate. So, but yeah. So rook g7 is a huge threat here, so he had to go back to e5. And now of course I could try to repeat moves once more, but he actually had less time than me, so there was no point in doing that. And I continued my idea to checkmate him with this move bishop to h4, now threatening bishop to e4, followed by rook to h7 checkmate. He found a decent defensive move, the move rook d6, setting up the move h6 as a response to bishop e4. But the position is really hopeless now. I can just take on d6. And now, with this king, this h7 square is always the problem, because yes, black has two pieces, but none of these pieces is actually on the light squares, so that's why his light squares are extremely weak. I can go bishop to c2, now threatening one of these two moves. Of course, I can't go queen d4 because of rook h6, so there's very little he can do now against queen e4. He tried to move h5 to at least bring the queen to h6. But yeah, this weakens the king even further now, and now I switch plans, so I do not play queen e4 immediately. I think it would also win, but okay. I played first rook to f4, the idea of rook f6, queen h6, and now just queen e4. Again, h7 is the problematic square. And now after knight to e6, rook to f6, my opponent resigned because the pieces are falling. So queen f6 is always answered with queen h7. Just put it on the board. And bishop f2 if he does something like this. I mean, I can even just ignore it, and there's not really any point. So that's why after rook f6, in view of these inevitable checkmates, my opponent resigned. what can I say? I think it was quite a decent game from me. Luckily, I didn't know that this position was reached a few times before when I sacrificed a piece. I'm also happy that even objectively, the computer says it's maybe very tiny bit better for black, but I mean, from a practical point of view, I would always take this position with white again. And afterwards it was quite hard for him to react. I think he missed this one chance by playing queen to d7, and afterwards with this e6, and then he takes f7. After ef7, I thought the game is pretty much busted. Computer still finds some more tenacious defenses, but even their computer says it's +2 or something for me. So I think from an objective point of view, the game is winning at that point already. Yeah, so I think it was very decent game by me. I'm very pleased with that game, and I hope you feel the same way. Thanks a lot for watching, and see you next time.